Sarah Jenkins walked through the quiet hallways of Atlanta General Hospital, her shoes making soft squeaking sounds against the polished floor. It was another night shift in the rehabilitation ward, something she had gotten used to over the past 3 years. At 32, she was one of the most respected nurses in the department, known for her gentle touch and endless patience with patients. The clock showed 11:30 p.m. when her supervisor called her to room 405. New patient coming in, her supervisor said, handing her a file. Workplace accident case. Construction worker. They'll need extra attention. Sarah nodded, taking the file and reading the name. Marcus Thompson, age 35. As she walked to the room, she reviewed his details. Paralyzed from the waist down after a scaffolding collapse 3 months ago. He had finally been transferred to their rehabilitation ward after multiple surgeries. When Sarah entered room 405, she found a man sitting in his wheelchair by the window, staring out into the dark night. Even sitting down, she could tell he was tall, with broad shoulders that spoke of years of physical work. His hands, resting on the wheelchair's arms, were strong but showed signs of recent weight loss. "Good evening, Mr. Thompson," Sarah said warmly. "I'm Sarah Jenkins, and I'll be your night nurse." Marcus turned his wheelchair around, and Sarah saw pain in his eyes. Not just physical pain, but the deep hurt of someone whose life had changed forever. But when he smiled, something warm lit up his whole face. "Please call me Marcus," he said, his voice deeper than she expected. "Mr. Thompson makes me feel like my father." Sarah went about her duties, checking his vitals and making notes. She noticed how Marcus watched her work, not with the usual anger or sadness she often saw in new patients, but with genuine interest. "You've been doing this long?" he asked, breaking the silence. 3 years in rehabilitation, Sarah answered, adjusting his IV. Before that, 2 years in emergency care. "Must be hard, dealing with people like me all day," Marcus said, trying to make it sound like a joke, but failing to hide the bitterness in his voice. Sarah stopped what she was doing and looked directly at him. "People like you? You mean strong people who are fighting to rebuild their lives?" "No, that's not hard at all. It's an honor." Marcus stared at her, surprised by her directness. Then he laughed. A real, genuine laugh that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "Well, that's a new way to look at it." Over the next few hours, as Sarah checked on her other patients, she found herself returning to room 405 more often than necessary. Marcus was different from other patients. He asked questions about her job, told funny stories about his construction days, and even made her laugh with his observations about hospital food. "You know what I miss most?" he said during one of their talks. "Building things, seeing something grow from nothing. Now I can't even build a simple shelf." Sarah sat in the chair next to his wheelchair. "Maybe not the same way as before, but there are always different ways to build things, Marcus." "Different ways," he repeated softly, looking at his hands. "I guess I'll have to learn those." As her shift ended at 7 a.m., Sarah realized she had spent more time talking to Marcus than any patient before. There was something about him, his strength, his humor even in dark moments. Wait, he listened when she spoke. "See you tomorrow night?" Marcus asked as she prepared to leave. "Same time, same place?" Sarah smiled. "Try to get some rest." Walking to her car in the early morning light, Sarah thought about Marcus Thompson. In just one night, he had shown more courage and personality than many people did in weeks. She had seen hundreds of patients come through the rehabilitation ward, but something told her this one was different. What Sarah didn't know then was that this ordinary night shift was the beginning of an extraordinary journey. Sometimes life's biggest surprises come wrapped in the most ordinary moments, and sometimes the greatest love stories start in the quietest ways, like a simple conversation between a nurse and her patient on a quiet night in room 405. Days turned into weeks at Atlanta General Hospital, and Sarah found herself looking forward to her night shifts more than ever before. Her supervisor began to notice how she would always volunteer for the rehabilitation ward, especially when Marcus was on her patient list. One quiet night, while helping Marcus with his evening exercises, Sarah noticed him watching her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. His hands, still strong from years of construction work, gripped the parallel bars as he tried to build upper body strength. "You know," Marcus said, breathing heavily from the exercise, "my mother came to visit yesterday during the day shift." Sarah nodded, keeping her hands ready to help if he needed support. How did that go? She means well, Marcus sighed, lowering himself back into his wheelchair. But she spent the whole time talking about this nice girl from church who's a teacher. Said I should think about dating again now that I'm adjusting to my new life. Sarah felt an unexpected twinge in her chest. Oh, and what did you say? Marcus looked directly at her, a small smile playing on his lips. I told her I'm already interested in someone else. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Sarah busied herself with checking his chart, trying to hide the blush creeping up her neck. She had been fighting her growing feelings for Marcus, telling herself it wasn't professional, that he was just being friendly because she was his nurse. Sarah, Marcus said softly, would you like to have coffee with me? Well, I'm not your patient anymore, I mean. Before she could answer, another nurse walked in. Sarah, your break time's over. Mrs. Peterson in 410 needs her medication. That night, as Sarah drove home, her mind was racing. Dating a former patient wasn't technically against hospital rules, but she knew people would talk. And then there were other concerns. Her family, his family, society's views on interracial relationships, and his disability. Her sister Lisa's reaction, when Sarah finally told her about Marcus, wasn't encouraging. Are you sure about this, Sarah? Life will be harder. People will stare. Have you really thought this through? I've thought about nothing else, Sarah replied firmly. When I'm with Marcus, I don't see his wheelchair. I see his smile, his strength, his kind heart. Marcus was facing his own battles. His best friend Tony visited him in the hospital, concerned about the rumors he'd heard from the staff. Man, you're still recovering. And dating your nurse? An African-American nurse? You know how some people are going to react. Marcus adjusted himself in his wheelchair, his jaw set firmly. I don't care what people think, Tony. Sarah sees me as a man, not just a guy in a wheelchair. When she looks at me, I feel whole again. Their first real date happened 2 weeks after Marcus was discharged. He took her to a small coffee shop near the hospital, navigating his wheelchair skillfully through the narrow doorway. Some customers stared, but Sarah and Marcus were lost in their own world. I was nervous you wouldn't come, Marcus admitted, stirring his coffee. Because of your wheelchair? Sarah asked. Because of everything. The chair, our different backgrounds, what people might say. Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. Let them talk. I've never felt this way about anyone before. As they left the coffee shop, an elderly couple walked past them, whispering and shaking their heads disapprovingly. Marcus's shoulders tensed, but Sarah squeezed his hand. Their problems are not our problems, she said firmly. That evening marked the beginning of something beautiful. While the world around them might have seen barriers, race, disability, social expectations, Sarah and Marcus saw only possibilities. Their love was growing stronger, built on a foundation of mutual respect, understanding, and the kind of courage that comes from knowing you found something worth fighting for. Neither of them knew then that this was just the beginning of their journey, and that the biggest challenges and surprises were still ahead. But in that moment, sitting together outside the coffee shop, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, they were just two people in love, breaking through barriers one day at a time. 2 years passed quickly for Sarah and Marcus. Their love grew stronger with each passing day, despite the challenges they faced. Marcus had made remarkable progress in his rehabilitation, though he still relied on his wheelchair. What Sarah didn't know was that he had been keeping a big secret from her. Every Monday and Wednesday, when Sarah worked her night shift at the hospital, Marcus attended special therapy sessions at a different rehabilitation center. He had discovered an experimental program that used advanced robotic leg braces. For 6 months, he worked tirelessly, building strength and learning to stand for short periods. You're making incredible progress, Marcus, his new therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, said during one session. Are you sure you want to keep this from Sarah? Marcus smiled, sweat running down his face as he gripped the parallel bars. The surprise will be worth it. I want this proposal to be perfect. He had been saving money from his new job as a construction project consultant, working from home, but still staying connected to the industry he loved. Every extra dollar went into a special account, part for the ring and part for the robotic leg braces he would need. One sunny Saturday morning, Marcus called Sarah's sister Lisa. Despite her initial doubts about their relationship, Lisa had become one of their strongest supporters after seeing how happy they made each other. Everything's set for next Friday, Marcus told her. Did you get the photographer? Yes, and I convinced Sarah to take that day off without making her suspicious, Lisa replied. Are you nervous? Terrified, Marcus admitted. But not about asking her to marry me. I'm just praying I can stand long enough with these braces. The big day arrived. Sarah thought she was just going to the rehabilitation center to support Marcus in demonstrating some exercises for new patients. When she walked into the therapy room, she stopped in surprise. The room was decorated with soft lights and flowers. Her family was there, along with Marcus's parents and their closest friends. Marcus sat in his wheelchair in the center of the room, wearing a new blue shirt that Sarah had once said brought out his eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he wheeled himself toward her. Sarah, he began, his voice full of emotion, these past 2 years have been the most amazing of my life. You saw me at my lowest point and helped me find strength I didn't know I had. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she watched the man she loved. She noticed something different about his legs, but couldn't quite figure out what it was. You never saw my wheelchair as a barrier, Marcus continued. You saw me, just me, and every day you make me want to be a better man. Then, to Sarah's astonishment, Marcus pressed a button on his wheelchair. With a quiet whir, mechanical braces along his legs activated. Slowly, holding onto the nearby support bar, Marcus began to rise from his wheelchair. Gasps filled the room. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, tears now streaming down her face. Marcus stood, shaking slightly but upright, supported by the robotic braces he had practiced with for so many months. They told me I might never stand again, Marcus said, his voice trembling with effort and emotion. But love makes impossible things possible. You taught me that, Sarah. With tremendous concentration, Marcus carefully lowered himself onto one knee, the robotic braces whirring softly as they helped him maintain balance. He pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket. Sarah Jenkins, you are the strongest, most beautiful soul I have ever known. Would you make me the happiest man in the world and be my wife? The room was silent except for the sound of happy sobs from both families. Sarah knelt down beside Marcus, not caring about the tears running down her face. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, 1,000 times yes. As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, the room erupted in cheers and applause. The photographer captured every moment, including the look of pure joy and love on Sarah's face as Marcus kissed her. What made the moment even more special was that Marcus's mother was crying tears of joy, hugging Sarah's parents, all their earlier doubts about the relationship long forgotten. In that moment, there were no barriers, no differences, just love in its purest form. Little did Sarah know, this amazing proposal was just the beginning of the surprises Marcus had planned for their future together. The months following the proposal were filled with both excitement and challenges for Sarah and Marcus. Wedding planning took on a unique dimension as they searched for venues that could accommodate Marcus's wheelchair while still creating their dream ceremony. This is the 5th venue we've seen, Sarah sighed, as they left another beautiful but inaccessible church. Marcus reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. We'll find the perfect place, he assured her. Besides, I have something else to focus on too. What Sarah didn't know was that Marcus had been continuing his therapy with the robotic leg braces, pushing himself harder than ever. He had a vision for their wedding day that kept him going through the exhausting sessions. Their families jumped into the planning, though not always helpfully. Sarah's mother worried about everything being practical, while Marcus's parents struggled with their own concerns about their son's special needs during the ceremony. Maybe we should just have a small courthouse wedding, Sarah suggested one evening after another stressful day of planning. No way, Marcus replied firmly. You deserve your dream wedding, and I'm going to make sure you get it. Finally, they found the perfect venue, a beautiful garden with wide, smooth pathways and an accessible indoor space. The owner, Mrs. Chen, had a son in a wheelchair and had designed the space to be inclusive. The moment I saw this place, Mrs. Chen told them, I knew it needed to be somewhere everyone could celebrate love. As the wedding date approached, Sarah noticed Marcus spending more time at physical therapy, but he always changed the subject when she asked about it. She assumed he was just working on staying strong for the ceremony. Their wedding coordinator, Jessica, worked closely with Marcus to ensure everything was perfectly planned. She was one of the few people who knew about his special surprise for Sarah. "Are you sure you can do this?" Jessica asked during a private meeting. "It's a lot of pressure." Marcus nodded, determination in his eyes. "I've been practicing every day. The doctor says I'm ready." The stress of wedding planning brought out different reactions in their families. One afternoon, during a cake tasting, Marcus's mother pulled Sarah aside. "I need to apologize," she said, tears in her eyes. "When Marcus first told me about you, I had so many worries. But watching you two together, seeing how you love each other, I was wrong. You're the best thing that's ever happened to my son." Sarah hugged her future mother-in-law, both women crying happy tears. Meanwhile, Marcus had his own emotional moment with Sarah's father. While discussing the father-daughter dance, Mr. Jenkins found Marcus alone, looking at the dance floor with longing. "Son," he said, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder, "you've shown me what real strength looks like. Not just in how you handle your disability, but in how you love my daughter." The week before the wedding, Sarah discovered a diary Marcus had been keeping. He quickly took it away before she could read it, claiming it was private until after the wedding. "Just a few surprises I want to keep for our special day," he said with a mysterious smile. What Sarah didn't know was that the diary contained Marcus's daily progress reports, his fears, his hopes, and most importantly, his detailed plan for giving her an unforgettable moment during their wedding photos. As the big day approached, everything finally fell into place. The venue was decorated, the guests were arriving, and a beautiful white dress hung in Sarah's closet. But the biggest surprise of all was still to come, carefully planned and practiced, waiting for the perfect moment to be revealed. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Sarah stood in the bridal suite, surrounded by her bridesmaids, her heart racing with excitement. Her white dress flowed perfectly, complementing her dark skin and making her look like a princess from a fairy tale. "You look absolutely beautiful," Lisa said, helping to adjust her sister's veil. Sarah could barely contain her emotions as she looked in the mirror. The past few months of planning had led to this perfect moment. In another room, Marcus was getting ready with help from his best friend Tony. He wore a specially tailored dark blue suit that looked elegant whether he was sitting or standing. Hidden beneath his pants were the robotic leg braces, but no one except Tony knew about them. "Are you ready for this?" Tony asked, helping Marcus with his tie. "More ready than I've ever been," Marcus replied, though his hands shook slightly. "Just nervous about everything going perfectly." The garden venue looked magical. White chairs lined the smooth pathway that would serve as the aisle, with flowers and ribbons decorating each row. The guests began to arrive, filling the seats and creating a warm atmosphere of love and support. Marcus wheeled himself to the front, positioning himself where he would wait for Sarah. His parents sat in the front row, his mother already dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The morning sun filtered through the trees, creating perfect lighting for the photographs. When the music started playing, everyone turned to watch Sarah walk down the aisle with her father. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. She was more beautiful than he had ever seen her, her smile radiating pure joy as she walked toward him. Mr. Jenkins kissed his daughter's cheek before placing her hand in Marcus's. The pastor began the ceremony, but Sarah and Marcus could hardly take their eyes off each other to listen to the words being spoken. "Love knows no boundaries," the pastor said, looking at the gathered crowd. "It doesn't see differences in ability or color. It sees only the heart, and these two hearts have found their perfect match in each other." During their vows, Sarah spoke first, her voice strong despite her tears. "Marcus, you've shown me what true strength looks like. Your determination, your kindness, and your love have made me a better person. I promise to stand by you, to support you, and to love you more each day." Marcus's voice trembled as he spoke his vows. "Sarah, you saw me when I felt invisible. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You've given me strength I never knew I had. I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of your love." The exchange of rings brought fresh tears to everyone's eyes. Sarah's hands shook as she placed the ring on Marcus's finger, and he steadied them with his own strong grip. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the pastor announced with a warm smile. "You may kiss the bride." Sarah leaned down to kiss Marcus, and the garden erupted in applause and cheers. As they broke apart, both laughing and crying, Marcus squeezed Sarah's hand 3 times, their secret signal that meant "I love you." Little did Sarah know that the biggest surprise of the day was yet to come, carefully planned for their upcoming photo session by the garden fountain. After the ceremony, the wedding photographer, David, gathered everyone for pictures. The garden was perfect for photos, with its blooming flowers and the golden afternoon light creating a magical atmosphere. "Let's start with some family photos," David suggested, positioning Sarah's family around her. Marcus watched with joy as his new wife posed with her parents and siblings. When it was time for his family's photos, they gathered proudly around his wheelchair, his mother's hand resting lovingly on his shoulder. The bridesmaids and groomsmen took their turns, creating beautiful group shots that captured the happiness of the day. But Marcus was waiting for a specific moment he had planned with David weeks ago. "Now, I'd like to get some shots of just the bride and groom by the fountain," David announced, giving Marcus a subtle nod. Tony quietly wheeled Marcus toward the ornate garden fountain while Sarah walked beside them, her white dress trailing elegantly behind her. "The lighting here is perfect," David said, adjusting his camera. But Marcus seemed distracted, checking something under his suit jacket. Sarah noticed his hands trembling slightly. "Are you okay, honey?" she asked, concerned. "We can take a break if you're tired." Marcus smiled mysteriously. "I'm better than okay, Sarah. There's something I've been working on for months. Something I wanted to say for this exact moment." Sarah looked confused as Tony stepped forward, standing close to Marcus's wheelchair. David had positioned himself perfectly, his camera ready to capture whatever was about to happen. "Do you remember our first date at the coffee shop?" Marcus asked, taking Sarah's hands in his. "You told me that when you looked at me, you saw beyond the wheelchair. You saw me." Sarah nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. The guests had gathered at a distance, sensing something special was about to happen. "Well, today, I want to show you something that I've been working towards since before I proposed," Marcus continued. He pressed a small button under his jacket, and Sarah heard a faint mechanical whir. "Marcus, what are you?" Sarah started to ask, but her words caught in her throat as she realized what was happening. Tony stood ready as Marcus began to move. The robotic braces beneath his suit pants activated, providing the support he needed. With determination in his eyes and love in his heart, Marcus slowly began to rise from his wheelchair. David's camera clicked rapidly, capturing every second of the moment. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth as she watched her husband stand before her, supported by the braces but standing nonetheless. The gathered crowd gasped collectively. Sarah's father gripped her mother's hand tightly. Marcus's parents held each other, tears streaming down their faces. "One more surprise for you, my love," Marcus whispered, steadying himself with Tony's help. Then, with tremendous effort and concentration, he took one small step toward Sarah. David's camera captured the exact moment Sarah realized what was happening, her eyes wide with surprise, joy, and love all mixed together. It would become their most treasured wedding photo, capturing a moment that seemed impossible just months ago. The rest of the wedding party watched in awe as Marcus stood before his bride, their heights finally matched, his eyes level with hers. In that moment, by the fountain on their wedding day, they weren't the interracial couple in their small town, or the nurse who married her patient. They were simply two people sharing a miracle born of love and determination. The garden fell silent as Marcus stood before Sarah, supported by his robotic braces. Time seemed to stand still as he took two more careful steps toward her, each movement a testament to months of secret practice and determination. "I wanted to dance with you at our wedding," Marcus said softly, his voice thick with emotion. Sarah's tears fell freely now, her hands trembling as she reached for him. David, the photographer, moved silently around them, capturing every angle of this incredible moment. The late afternoon sun created a golden halo around the couple, making the scene look almost magical. "May I have this dance?" Marcus asked, extending his hand to Sarah. The wedding DJ, understanding the cue, began playing At Last by Etta James, the song they had chosen for their first dance. Sarah stepped into Marcus's arms, careful to let him lead at his own pace. The robotic braces whirred softly as they swayed together, Marcus maintaining his balance through sheer will and months of practice. "How long have you been planning this?" Sarah whispered, still in disbelief. "Since the day I proposed," Marcus replied. "Every Monday and Wednesday, while you were working nights, I was at therapy learning to use these braces. I wanted to give you this moment." Their guests watched in amazement as the couple shared their first dance. Marcus's physical therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, stood at the edge of the crowd, pride evident on his face as he watched his patient accomplish what many had thought impossible. Someone in the crowd started recording with their phone, capturing the beautiful moment. Within hours, the video would begin its journey across social media, touching hearts and inspiring millions. Marcus managed to stay standing for 3 full minutes, longer than he had ever achieved in practice. When he finally needed to sit back in his wheelchair, the entire garden erupted in applause and cheers. Sarah knelt beside his wheelchair, not caring about her white dress touching the garden path. "You amazing, wonderful man," she said, kissing him through her tears. "I can't believe you did all this for me." "For us," Marcus corrected her, wiping away her tears. "You never gave up on me, Sarah. You helped me believe in miracles again." The video of their dance quickly went viral on social media. By the end of their wedding reception, it had already been shared thousands of times. News stations began calling, wanting to tell their story. But for Sarah and Marcus, the most precious thing wasn't the attention their story was getting. It was the stack of photos David had taken, capturing every emotion on their faces during those magical moments by the fountain. The final photo in the sequence, which would later hang prominently in their home, showed them in perfect profile, Marcus standing tall beside his bride, both of them radiating pure joy, the fountain spray creating a rainbow behind them, a perfect symbol of their love's ability to overcome any obstacle. Their wedding guests left that evening having witnessed not just a marriage, but a moment of pure magic, a testament to the power of love, determination, and the human spirit. 3 months after their wedding, Sarah and Marcus sat in their living room, still amazed by how their lives had changed. Their wedding video had reached over 10 million views, and their story had been featured on major news networks across the country. "Look at this email," Sarah said, showing Marcus her phone. "Another rehabilitation center wants you to speak to their patients about never giving up hope." Marcus smiled, adjusting himself in his wheelchair. Though he still used the robotic braces occasionally, the wheelchair remained his primary means of mobility. "Our story is bigger than us now," he replied, pulling Sarah close. They had received thousands of messages from people around the world. Some were from other interracial couples facing discrimination. Others came from disabled individuals who found hope in Marcus's determination. Many were from healthcare workers inspired by Sarah's dedication to seeing beyond physical limitations. Their viral fame led to unexpected opportunities. A medical technology company offered to sponsor Marcus as he traveled to speak at rehabilitation centers. Sarah was invited to write a column for a nursing journal about compassionate care and breaking down barriers in healthcare. Together, they started a foundation called Beyond Barriers, which helped provide advanced mobility equipment to people who couldn't afford it. The robotic braces company that had helped Marcus stand at his wedding became their first corporate sponsor. "Remember when your mother worried about life being too hard for us?" Marcus asked one evening as they prepared for another speaking engagement. Sarah laughed, looking at the framed photo from their wedding, the one capturing the moment he stood by the fountain. "Now she tells everyone she always knew we were meant to be together." Their home became a gathering place for support group meetings, where couples facing similar challenges could find encouragement and advice. Marcus and Sarah shared their story openly, including the hard parts, the stares, the whispers, the doubts they had overcome. "The wheelchair doesn't define our marriage," Sarah would often say to these groups. "Love does." 1 year after their wedding, they received a special invitation. The garden venue where they got married wanted them to be guests of honor at an event celebrating the opening of their new accessibility-focused wedding pavilion, inspired by their story. As they prepared for the event, Sarah helped Marcus put on his robotic braces. He still practiced with them regularly, though now it was more about inspiring others than surprising anyone. "You know what's funny?" Marcus said, standing slowly with Sarah's help. "Everyone thinks the biggest miracle was me standing at our wedding. But the real miracle happened long before that, the day you walked into room 405 and saw me as just me." Sarah wrapped her arms around him, their wedding photo smiling down at them from the wall. Their story had become a beacon of hope for many, proving that love knows no barriers, that determination can create miracles, and that sometimes the greatest love stories come from the most unexpected beginnings. "Ready to go inspire more people?" Sarah asked, smiling up at her husband. Marcus kissed her gently. With you by my side? Always. Their journey had become more than just a viral moment or an inspiring video. It had become a movement, showing the world that true love sees with the heart, that disabilities don't define relationships, and that sometimes the biggest surprises in life come wrapped in challenges that only make love stronger.